has emerged,
pulling us together into an open metaverse
where anything can be connected to anything.
We're not building the future. You are.
I can't watch that trailer without tearing up a little bit every single time. Hey, everybody. My name is Knux, and welcome to our very first Futureverse AMA with live video. I will be our moderator for today. A little quick intro to me, just to get that out of the way. I'm a product director within Futureverse, focused on the Third Kingdom, but I'm also a very passionate member of our overall community. Today, I'm here to basically keep us on topic, keep the flow of the conversation going, ask questions on your behalf that you've submitted ahead of time or that you ask via YouTube. And I'm also just here to make sure that we have some fun. If you're not quite sure where you are or how you got here, that's all gonna make sense a lot soon. So don't stress, just stick around. You're in for a very wild ride. So for those of you who do know where you are, welcome back. We're excited to have you here. And there will be something new here for everybody today. You just have to really listen and kind of pay attention. So during this AMA, I'll be guiding both of our founders, two of our three founders, Aaron and Shara, to talk about Futureverse in a few key dimensions. Joellen, if you want to pull up kind of our beautiful F logo, thank you so much. We'll be focusing on our vision, mission, purpose, etc., and really getting down to some of the nitty-gritty of what Futureverse is building, all the while talking about how Futureverse's approach is a lot different from some of what else we're seeing in this space. After that, we'll roll into some questions, starting with some questions that you've all submitted, doing a little bit of synthesis, and I've already built most of that into some of the questions that I'll be guiding the team through today. And then again, like I said, you'll have an opportunity to use YouTube's platform to ask some of those questions as well. So lots of questions, lots of different ways to engage here, and we're really excited to get everything started. Before we kick off, again, acknowledging that there will be a decent chunk of people who haven't been here before and may not know about Futureverse or our co-founders. I'm going to do something that will seem a little bit funny to those of you who have been around for a while, but I'm actually going to introduce in longish form both of our co-founders. So I'm going to start with Aaron. If you want to pull up Aaron's face here, Joellen, so we can see him while I'm talking about him. Hey, Aaron. Welcome.
Thanks, dude.
Aaron. Yeah, man, it's excited to have you here. So Aaron, I'm going to talk about this like we haven't known each other for a long time now, but Aaron McDonald is a 20-plus year technology industry veteran and a serial entrepreneur with experience managing portfolios well over $1 billion in revenue. He has been a longtime innovator with his eyes on the future, from leading the market in telecommunications to now leading innovation in Web3 and the metaverse. Aaron is the founder of multiple metaverse companies that have been developed independently that are now being rolled up into Futureverse, which we'll be talking about today. His interest in blockchain technology began in 2015, but soon doubled down on blockchain, Web3, etc., where we found the next big problem to solve. How do we actually get this technology, which makes sense and has a lot of different value points to it, into the hands of everyday users? How do we make the process of using this technology invisible to users so that we can get to mass adoption? He focused largely at first on different applications as the funnel for users until 2020, when it became clear that content was actually going to be the user funnel, when the Web3 community grew significantly and became alive through NFTs, as a lot of us know. As a technology visionary and co-founder of Futureverse, Aaron McDonald is responsible for some of today's largest NFT collections and most innovative blockchain and Web3 technologies. In 2019, he was named the Ernst & Young Technology Entrepreneur of the Year and recognized by IDG as one of the top 50 technology leaders. We're very happy to have you here, Aaron.
Yeah, no, very happy to be here, and that's embarrassing. Please don't ever do that again.
It was not my idea.
No, it's good. It's good. I've still got goosebumps from the trailer, and really excited to be here today talking to everyone. I see some Dad Chad comments in the comments feed here. I fully endorse the Dad Chad movement. So get there, guys. Get there, dads.
I love that. All right, well, we'll peek away from Aaron for a second and we'll pull up Shara so that we can have equal amounts of embarrassment here.
Wait,
hi,
so
Shara.
He's
it's
gone
your turn
and
to
I'm
get
here
embarrassed.
alone.
That's right. It's just me and you.
Perfect.
All right. So, Shara Senderoff is a well-respected technology and entertainment entrepreneur and venture capitalist. Senderoff's reputation for visionary strategy and foresight, both technically and creatively, has commanded attention throughout Web3 and entertainment industries. She has been named one of Forbes 30 Under 30, Rolling Stone's Future 25, Fast Company's 100 Most Creative People in Business, and any other combination of a large publication and a number that you can think of. Shara began her career in the entertainment industry, producing films with every major Hollywood studio before adding technology to her resume. She leveraged her deep understanding and interest to guide major players in film, music, and sports on how to innovate their businesses and revenue streams with technology. A prolific early adopter, Senderoff founded blockchain venture fund and studio Raised in Space in 2018, alongside music industry titan Scooter Braun and crypto leader Ripple. Focused on Web3 in its earliest days, Senderoff constructed a portfolio of compelling metaverse infrastructure and leading NFT ventures and became a thought leader for the technical possibilities of the future, which you're going to hear a lot about today. Shara brings an unprecedented amount of understanding of IP, storytelling, environment to Futureverse, which she has co-founded with Aaron. So there you go, Shara. Hope you're not too red after all that.
What I like the most is that this image of the Flufflets, it will be Aaron and I in there high-fiving each other in the metaverse.
That is pretty sick. I love it.
How cute are Flufflets?
Oh, they're my favorite thing in the world.
I think the Buzzies are going to challenge them, though. Those things are intricate.
Very much so. Very much
Not
so.
necessarily on cuteness. Maybe some of them. Some of them may.
The beauty of Buzzies is that they span cuteness to whatever the opposite of cuteness is.
Yeah, exactly. To horror.
Excited for that. Well, let's get to some of the fun stuff. Joellen, you know what to do. I'm going to kind of start guiding us through all this. Basically, the first question, and I'm just going to start rapid firing some of this and get you all jazzed up here, both of you. So Aaron, the first question, I'm going to start with a softball, is what is Futureverse?
Yeah, so I guess the Futureverse is a organization that's been brought together over the last, I guess, 6 years when we first had the vision to create an ecosystem of connected companies that could help each other solve the user adoption problems for Web3. And those companies have been building different parts of that vision. And in the last kind of 6 to 9 months, we've been working on bringing them into a more formalized structure. Now that they've gone and solved each one of those problems individually, it makes sense to get some kind of momentum and scale bringing them together. And so what the Futureverse is a business that is focused on putting technology together with content to create those onboarding funnels, making things super simple for users when they're coming into this open metaverse environment, developing really great partnerships with world-leading brands and IP so that we can extend this idea of the open metaverse into mainstream audiences. It's 300 people plus that are all experts in their fields, working together to make the idea of the open metaverse come to life.
Beautifully said. Everything about what you just said too uses such simple language. I feel like the only word that really sticks out is metaverse. And metaverse is a word you hear a lot. It's almost, it is a bit of a meme at this point. What does it mean?
Yeah, I think the simplest way to describe it is it's the next evolution of the internet, and people often get trapped into the idea of it being about VR or AR or gaming, but actually it's just an evolution of all the things that are happening in the internet and in the digital economy today, with some tweaks, some really important tweaks, and the ones that I think stick out the most would be the metaverse is about breaking down the user experience silos that have existed in the past around different parts of your experience online. And as we get more and more into being a digital society, those silos which existed in the past, social or communications, commerce, finance, gaming, media, they're actually being concatenated into a single user experience journey in a more immersive space. And I don't necessarily mean game environments, although that is a big part of it. But taking things that were discrete and putting them together in a streamlined UX is one of the things that I think defines this transition from where we've been in the internet into the metaverse. The other one, which is probably the most important thing, is I think the metaverse can't exist without the notion of user-owned data, content, assets, identity, social graph, all of the things that make our online experience happen underneath. If we continued with the current model, which is those are locked within the walls of applications and it's hard to move them out, or the way that those things interact with other applications is exploitative, then we don't move forward into the metaverse. We just have, the internet we have today with maybe some VR and AR. And so the metaverse has to be about bringing communities back to the front of the internet and enabling members of those communities to own their digital presence online. And be able to interact with the applications they choose to interact with and move when they choose to move. So if you put those two things together, it's really, the next evolution of the online experience, which is like breaking down the silos between different things. And it's about giving users ownership of their digital presence and assets online.
That ownership and that sort of antithetical nature to some of that exploitativeness, is that what makes the metaverse open? Or are there any other kind of key principles there?
Yeah, I think that the idea of openness is grounded in this idea of ownership, because without users being able to make the choice to take their shit between applications, you don't have openness. If the choice is made by the application developers, then it's as open as they feel that it should be. You can only achieve true openness by putting the power back in the hands of the end users. And so if you do that, applications then become the servants of their communities, because if those community members aren't getting what they want from those applications, then they can take all the stuff that matters to that app to somewhere else. Right. And so it changes the fundamental relationship between applications and users. And that's what drives openness, because choice is the ultimate outcome of openness. And you can't have true choice without ownership. And so how do you actually achieve that? Well, this is kind of the fundamental problem that decentralized infrastructure is trying to solve. It's making it possible for users to have ownership by putting the data or the anchor points for those online assets in a compute and storage domain, which isn't able to be switched off by somebody else. So no matter what a company promises you, whoever can turn the switch off at the data center when they walk out, they're actually in control of the data. And so this, decentralized infrastructure, blockchains in particular, give users the ability to store data and compute things about that data without having to worry that someone's going to switch the data center off.
Right. And that fits so well with the sort of brand ethos that we heard at the very end of that trailer. We are not building the future, you are, right?
Yeah.
Shara?
Yeah,
Shara, I feel like that's an interesting concept to expand
It's a really important point, because so many companies today are saying we're building the future. Here it comes from us. And the thought of that is so possessive and so antithetical to everything that the metaverse stands for, which Aaron just so beautifully outlined, which is that the decentralization of it, and we don't want to use that term, but I think it's because it's big and it's clunky, and we're going to get into the simplification of the language and how we as Futureverse will speak to be able to onboard the masses. But it's an important word, which is that if it is truly decentralized, if the future is decentralized, then it means that everybody can contribute, and that we as an entity are not building the future. And we frankly believe nobody is, because that's what has happened in the past. And we believe that the future is about everyone contributing their ideas and everyone owning the things that are important to them and owning their reality. And so when we say we're not building the future, what we mean by that is that the future is not something that can be built alone. It's something that requires everybody's input. It requires a true open-minded approach and an open-hearted approach to working with humans in a way that we haven't before, and to allow the technology to work together in a way that it hasn't before. And so when we say that, we truly mean that the future is a co-created entity, and that's our ethos, and what we stand for is that we all come together to build it together. And that's why we specifically said we're not building the future, it's everything we'll create together.
There's a little comment in the comment section here from NFT Bro around aren't we in control of your NFT data? So that's a good question, and it's something that comes up often in the realm of NFTs. Where is stuff hosted? I think it's really important to understand that the metaverse is primarily about the data assets, in my mind, not the applications. And so the things that matter for the open metaverse are things like your identity and your social graph and your communications and your underlying assets. Those are the things that I think are the most important things to protect for users to make the open metaverse work. Content is an important thing to make open, because that's how you can, augment your identity, let's say, when you go into different applications. But that's a little bit harder to do in a fully decentralized way, especially at the application layer. What we try to do with content is make the content available to the owners of that content so they can choose where they want to store it. And so even though we might host some content ourselves, and you might be dependent on that hosting, and that can't all be done in a fully decentralized way sometimes, you're able to download those and host them yourself somewhere else. And so providing the choice to people to do that and the legal right to do that, I think is the most important step we can make right now. Now, over time, we'll get better and better at the technology side so that more and more content can become hosted in the same way that those important metaverse data assets are. For now, we're trying to provide as much control as possible to the users to be able to take that and make choices about what they do with that content. And in the interactions where we have dynamic content, for example, we use smart contract systems, which everyone can go on chain and look at to allow users to control that. That's not something we do arbitrarily ourselves. That's something that happens within, the underlying infrastructure of the chain, so that users are explicitly consenting to make those changes to the content assets that they own.
Absolutely. It's just so fun to hear you both kind of going back and forth about this. There are a couple of slides I want to bring up that sort of focus on this human-centric part of everything you're saying, because it's so easy for people to get lost in, this technology is going to be so much better. We're going to be doing all this amazing stuff. But in reality, like the core of what we're doing, the core of what you're talking about, everything you say puts humans at the front. So I think in the Futureverse manifesto, we say something along the lines of, we're pursuing a vision rooted in love and expressed in technology. And you don't really hear companies ever maybe dating apps, talking about love. But we actually, we mean it. We're really talking about this. Like there's this core human element that's a big part of this. Shara, Aaron, both of you, however you guys want to go back and forth about this, I'd love to hear about that vision and why that's such a strong part of what we're doing.
I mean, I think that the idea behind this is that the mission we are on here is much more important than building a game or creating a company. We're actually trying to change the future, and that comes from a place of love for humanity. And I think, when we started this journey 6 years ago, we could see a future where if our society becomes a more digital society, and it will, and it is, the people in the communities that exist within that should be the ones that are in charge of how that evolves, and should be the ones who benefit from ownership in it. And that's not the path the internet has been on. It's been on the opposite of that. And so the vision and the mission of the Futureverse is deeply rooted in that love for humanity, because we want to put humanity back at the center of the internet, and in the metaverse, the next evolution of the internet. Because without that, it's going to be a pretty grim world, in my view.
Yeah, I think to add one thing to that, I think the contrast of love versus fear is really interesting. We've existed in a world over the last few years in particular that has been anchored in fear in a lot of ways. And now we introduce the next version of the internet with big terms that people don't understand: decentralization, NFTs, blockchain, metaverse, and everyone is just spiraling confused. What does this mean for me? What is this going to do? How should I be prepared? What am I supposed to know? How do I protect myself? And I think the only way you can reverse fear and decrease it is to bring in a lot of love. And I think that brands often talk about what they're going to do, but they talk about less about why they're going to do it. And I think Aaron mentioned what's really important to us, which is why we're doing what we're doing, which is to bring humanity to the center of the internet. And that's our purpose, which I think you have on another slide. And that's the simplest purpose. If you're a human, you're in control. Unlike how you've been in the past, you control your assets, you control your data, you control your identity. Everything that goes with you can be turned on and off by you and not somebody else. And that's critical to what we're building with Futureverse.
Yeah, and so much of this, it's easy to get lost and say, you're just throwing up these sentences and they're just these words like love and purpose and vision and, all this different stuff. But, we had a conversation earlier, Shara, about this, where this is like our architecture. And this is like the most foundational architecture of how we think about the decisions we'll be making, how that translates into decisions, around strategy, product, brand, et cetera. So much of this will drive the future that, we build together with these communities that we're kind of fostering. And I just think it's important to call that out here. To me, I've never been more excited about some of what we're doing, because this language is now real. Like, we can point to something and say, this is our North Star. It makes sense. And we know humans are at the center. We know that we're focused on, all of these things around making the technology serve, the better good of the different people within our communities, rather than, the current state of it. It's definitely worthwhile to I wanted to make a little pin for people listening, because a lot of folks, who are used to very rich alpha information, which I think we'll get a little bit, in a bit in this conversation, might say, I already know this. I've already heard this before. But in reality, a lot of this is
I think
very real.
There's a good question in the comments here, which is how this be commercially, successful. There's a lot of competition. What's the plan? I think the important point Knux is trying to make is that all great, successful organizations are built on top of great brands and great visions and clarity around what people are trying to do. If you spend the time to build a foundation based on those things, what that does is it energizes people so they want to come and work with you, and you get the best people working with you. That's the next stage, right? So create something that people can really fall in love with and get behind and see the purpose of. Communicate that really well. Then you get great talent. Once you get great talent, then you can start to deliver great products. And once you deliver great products, then you start to build, users and communities around those things. And we've seen that happen already in the last, year, especially with the content coming out to the communities, that we've been able to take this brand and vision and purpose and translate that into great talent that makes great products. So that's the start of success. In terms of why we think we're different, I think we got asked this question by some journalists recently when we were talking to them about the Futureverse. Most people, when they talk about the metaverse, they're talking about an application. And when we talk about the metaverse, we're talking about the substrate that can exist below all applications. So when we are thinking about how to, create success out of this, the plan comes in two parts: build great technology that makes the user experience seamless and invisible, and then pair that with great content so that we can create a reason for people to come in and use that technology and be delighted by the experience of it. And 3, partner with what we think are the world's best brands in 5 categories that matter for the metaverse to reach new audiences. Those are the things we're doing. And by doing that, we actually demonstrate that the metaverse works. Right now, it's just an idea. And in reality, no one has actually demonstrated a compelling reason for the metaverse to exist and a compelling user experience or product experience that is different from what they see today. And the plan of the Futureverse is to demonstrate that over the next year. And once you've shown that it works and that it's compelling and that it can reach new audiences, then you create a center of gravity that will encourage other people to build with you. And so our strategy is quite a bit different to what you would hear from most metaverse companies, because they're often focused on a single application. And I don't think that does enough to actually prove the compelling product use case for the metaverse itself.
Yeah, I really love that. I wanted to bring up this slide to kind of talk through as well. I think it fits really well as in a little addendum to what you were just saying. With that gravity well that's pulling everybody in, there's also this concept of what Shara likes to say a lot. Like, a lot of people don't want to hear these words: NFT, decentralized, all this different type of stuff. They want to engage, they want to play, they want to have fun, and then learn while doing it. We can bring people into this world and teach them by engaging them, rather than just talking at them and saying, you need to understand these 12 layers of technology before you can even participate. Is there anything either of you would like to expand upon that?
Yeah, I think it's true. I think the technology should be invisible. We shouldn't be talking about a lot of these big words that no one needs to understand. It needs to be seamless, and they need to be able to interact and engage, and they'll know what to do once they jump in if we nail the user experience, which we plan on doing. That's why that's the top priority and focus for us, is to nail it so it's so simple that you don't have to ask questions as to how and why these things are working.
Absolutely.
Someone's mentioned the birds.
Finally,
in the comments.
They're in Mystic Valley.
Yes.
How long did it take?
But you should know, Shara's sitting in Mystic Valley, and surely there are birds there.
Of course. So this is a live world I'm in.
Every platform is going to be freaking out about, like, wait, when birds? I thought we were focused on buzzies.
When birds. There's a few questions in here about the network and the nodes and stuff like that. So just to give you kind of some thoughts on where we're at with that, I would say in January we'll start to roll out the root token, and through the series of challenges that we've lined up, one of which you know about, or two of which you know about already. One was the TNL challenge, and then we have recently, just yesterday, announced the Thingies Portal challenge. So those two will probably kick off the initial token launches. And alongside that, we want to have staking ready at the same time. So that users can start to participate in the network infrastructure and security of the root network. And so look out for more information during January about getting nodes up and running and preparing for those two activities. We'll be starting to share a bit more information about that. There's
That's
a whole
super
bunch
exciting.
of other stuff happening at the same time to enable us to launch our first applications on chain as well. So once we hit the ground with the token, there'll be stuff to do with it.
Beautiful. And I know you're reading the YouTube stuff. It's one of the best parts about having Aaron in charge of building the future with all of us is that he's actually psychic. And so he knows the questions that I'm going to ask him before he actually asks them, and then just answer them. So it makes it like way easier to do this. Love it. So that was super helpful. That's really exciting. I think a lot of people are going to be very excited about that. I think now we're going to maybe slightly shift gears. Again, focusing on a lot of people who already know some of this stuff, but a lot of people who don't. Hopefully we can give you an idea within Futureverse. Futureverse, if you've read some of our recent publications, PR, things like that, you're starting to hear, oh, there's this, all of these companies are coming together to form Futureverse. So I wanted to give a chance to give Aaron and Shara here the ability to talk about who is part of Futureverse, and a little bit of a high-level overview, and then we're going to dig into a couple pieces and maybe even show some interesting updates for some of these companies. So go ahead, Aaron, if you don't mind, kind of giving a high-level overview.
Yeah. So the Futureverse is like I mentioned earlier, bringing two kind of sides of a coin together. On one side, you've got technology and infrastructure, and the other side, you've got content. So the companies that are coming into this are providing a mix of those capabilities. If you look at the technology side, what we've tried to pull together is something that we're calling, internally at least, the Open Metaverse Operating System. And so these are the underlying technologies that enable you to have those, what we're calling the metaverse of data, that portable information about you, available as a simple interface for application developers to build experiences on top of. So we talked about identity being a core function there. CentraPass brings that capability to the table. We talked about your social graph and communications. Silo brings that to the table. We're talking about connectivity to payments infrastructure. CentraPay and Immersive bring that to the table. We've got this kind of underlying capability across all of the things we're doing with artificial intelligence. Altered State Machine brings that to the table. And so those are the kind of technology pillars alongside the root network. And then on the other side, on the content side of things, we've got these great content brands and studios who've been developing the stuff that you love today, like Non-Fungible Labs, the Shadows team, the Atom Car Club, and recently announced Altered Phoenix Gaming Studio. And this is the first batch of companies that we've announced. There are some more to come into here, and some pretty significant announcements to make about other organizations joining the Futureverse. But we're building, I would say, the most comprehensive full stack metaverse capability out there. If you compare this to many of the providers out there or players that are trying to build, inside of the open metaverse, most of them have some of this. None of them have all of it, and that might seem kind of ambitious, and it is. But our view is that because no one's demonstrated this in action before, and because user experience is the number one problem to solve for onboarding more users, having the ability to deliver an end-to-end solution internally to prove that this stuff works and that it can be a great user experience, we think is going to be a faster path than trying to hodgepodge stuff together from all over the place. And so bringing all of this under one roof gives us the ability to really streamline that user experience and provides a sizable organization that has the weight to go and do the deals that we've been doing with the biggest brands in the world to activate those new audiences on top of this technology.
That actually is a really good segue potentially to talk through a little bit of a deep dive for some of these. So I think, some folks have already seen this, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk through it. Let's pull up the trailer, our original kind of trailer here for the FIFA collaboration, talking about biggest brands in the world. I want to give us a moment to really celebrate that one. So if you want to pull up that trailer, Joellen, we'll play that and then talk about it for a minute.
Heads up, the gaming world's all shook up. Why? Because the AI League's launching at the FIFA World Cup. Predict matches, compete against your friends, score mad rewards, and create a team for a new metaverse street football game. Hold up, don't interrupt. Turn up, tear up, hype up, glow up. It's time to rise up. Grab your ticket to the future of gaming.
Sick.
Yeah, totally. And it's a really great relationship that we're building with the FIFA team, and there are already multiple conversations about how we extend the relationship beyond the FIFA AI League into other areas within the content domain, but also in the core kind of operations within FIFA. I think that's going to be an exciting partnership that will continue to bring more people and more utility to the infrastructure that we're building. And it's just one of the mega brands that we've got lined up across those 5 categories. So I think, I would say we're very well set up to have the chance to take this technology to a really big audience across 5 areas, which we think are really important to onboarding new users into the metaverse. Worked really hard to get some of these across the line, and it'll be worth the effort. I know Shara's pulled a few hairs out going around the traps on legal agreements and those kinds of things, but it's definitely worth the pain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I can't speak.
There's a couple of questions
floating
in here around Unreal Engine and Unity. I think again, the most important thing to remember is that the metaverse is primarily the data layer. Engines for real-time environments or game environments, etc., they're going to evolve over time, and our goal is to make it super easy for people to connect the things they value to different applications powered by different engines. There won't be an outright winner in this space, and we shouldn't be trying for that anyway, because that just ends up back in the original position we're trying to solve for, which is putting users at the center of the internet and the center of content. If everything goes to one platform, then you end up with another power broker, a different one that exists today. And so being able, in the range of applications that we're building now, I think 8 different applications within the Futureverse, we're using different engines to ensure that the technology can support builders who want to build across those things, but also to prove that the metaverse can work between these different applications powered by different things. And if we can demonstrate that's another step for keeping the metaverse open. Some things are good for some engines are good for some types of experiences, some are good for others, and we want to be able to remain open to how that landscape evolves over time as new technologies come to market. So I wouldn't focus too much on which one versus which one, because both are good at different things, and we don't want to see a world where any one of them is, you know, the center of the universe. We're having great conversations with both sides, and we'll continue to do that, and make sure that we're getting the best out of those technologies for our users over time.
Yeah. And synthesizing a couple of the things that you just said, even going back to the FIFA part, you know, everything that we've already done with FIFA has just shown and proven our ability to deliver in this full stack across the board sort of way, building the, you know, on the substrate, building this content, building amazing games, you know, et cetera. And I think people are going to start to see a lot more of that. And I think that between that and what you were just saying, you know, even like with Unreal Engine, Unity, kind of, you know, towing that line and being able to build in both, it really is this almost like snowball effect. I mean, snowball is like a funny way to even look at it, but it's like, it's just, we're building up more and more and more over time. I guess from your perspective, when you think about the infrastructure and the content and how you kind of balance between those two, it seems actually quite difficult. You really seamlessly kind of thread through it, but how do we balance that between building in those two layers? Because most companies struggle to do just one or the other. We're doing both at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, you know, one of the interesting questions that I get asked when I'm talking to funds and stuff like that is, are you doing too much? And my response to that is no. Because if you lift the hood on any major, let's call it proto-metaverse, a Roblox or something like that, they have all of this stuff. Like, they have a way to authenticate users, give them an identity within that environment. They have a way to, an infrastructure layer that supports all the assets and content. They have the social features that you can interact with others that are inside of those environments. So all of those things exist in their walled garden. And so we're not building anything more than is actually necessary to make a metaverse work. And people are out there saying, "Oh, I'm building a metaverse," and they haven't even thought about those things, let alone have teams working on them. You know, those people probably don't know what they're talking about. And so, yes, it is a lot, but it's also what's required to make this stuff work. And as I mentioned before, we're doing it in a way that means that users are in control and at the center of it, and in a way that allows other application developers to build on top of it. And we're making sure that it actually works by developing our own content to use it. And it's one of those situations where when you're building something new that hasn't been done before, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And because we're pairing content with technology, we can explore as we move along and improve things. Oh, you know, we thought this was going to work that way. It didn't quite work that way. Protocol team, go and change that thing, or content team, go and change that thing, until we get to the point where it works seamlessly. And because we control both halves of that equation, I think we'll move faster and we'll be able to make improvements, you know, quicker than others, and make that experience more seamless for the end users.
What role do you think? Go ahead.
I'm just going to add that the range of IP is really important and really strategic, because we can't build for one audience. We have to build for not only an age range, because this is for everyone, but we have to build in niches that are going to attract different types of fans of different properties. And so you'll see as we roll out new IP that we've partnered with next year, that there will be something for everyone. There won't be everything for everyone. And that's very, very, very intentional.
Yeah, I think, that's the other things, you know, having 8 or so different properties within the Futureverse enables us to show how content can cross user segment boundaries. And someone asked a question earlier, how do you scale your community and your user base while making sure that you keep your early contributors kind of a core part of your mission and vision? And that comes down to segmentation. I spoke about this before when we were up in Melbourne last a couple weeks ago. In a healthy ecosystem of in a healthy open source ecosystem, and this isn't something I invented. This is something that's come from other really great ecosystems like the Linux Foundation. You have different types of participants. This really core group that are involved with building, the core infrastructure. You've got another community of super users on top of that are providing valuable feedback and contributing in that process. You've got another layer of fans, super fans, let's call them, that are evangelizing what you're doing and taking and creating content around that. And then you've got on top of that, you've got kind of the next layer of users inside of there. You've got different segments, from people who are interested in, rich, immersive, deep, long-term, stories, to people who are after casual experiences. People are there for a point in time to make a commercial transaction. So having segmentation of users is really important when you start to grow, because not everyone fills the same role, but everyone fills an important role. So what you think about as an early contributor and your role in that ecosystem doesn't have to scale to everyone. It only has to apply to you. And when we look at how we, say, create value inside of the economic systems within these applications and infrastructure, we're not necessarily focused on scaling that part of it to the mass market, because that's not the segment that everyone will fall into. But all of the people in the mass market will contribute value back to those people who play that role. And so I think it's a common mistake or misunderstanding that's like, well, if I'm one of the people that are, an early contributor and I'm playing the kind of economic metagame, how can that exist if everyone's playing that game? Well, everyone doesn't play that game, and so being able to segment users and community members into those different domains allows us to focus the value points on the things that matter to those different segments. And I think we've designed a very good structure for doing that. Just last week, in fact, I was working to solve some of the remaining problems, I think, in that economic model for early asset holders. And I think I nailed it. We're writing up a paper on this at the moment that will explain how that works. And I think it's a novel solution that will provide a way for other Web3 communities to capture value inside of those different segments and make sure that we do reward those early contributors within the role they're playing inside of that ecosystem.
Beautiful. So that's some of the stuff that you were mentioning earlier. We'll hear about over the next couple of months, right?
Yeah. Actually, shout out to my son Michael, who actually cracked the nut on that. Yeah, it was something that was bugging me for a while, and he had a really great insight. And I think now that we've solved that, we open up so many doors.
Yeah, double shout out to Michael for helping us QA some buzzies today.
Oh yeah, buzzies tomorrow. Look out tomorrow, everyone.
Should be fun. Everyone's buzzing. Let's talk about a little bit. I'll get back into some other, high level stuff. We've hit some incredible topics here. I did want to give a chance to talk about this recent leak. I think we're leaking it here actually, about the ATOM garage for Jenny Bryan. So if you want to pull up some images, Joellen, I'd love to get some voiceover from Aaron about what we're seeing here, kind of in the context of, just talk about beautiful, and then also talk about segmented different, communities as well, right? This is a beautiful example of enthusiasts. People don't get enthusiastic about things as much as they get about cars, right?
Yeah, no, especially me. I think, the Atom Car Club's a really good example of a segment of users that will engage with certain content but not other content. And when we look at the way that we're building out the Futureverse, we've always said the kind of idea of a super app isn't a good one, because people will come to join content channels for different reasons, and you want to create the optimal user experience for each one of those user segments. And this idea of the Atom Car Club of blending the real life car club culture with a digital experience or community is a really powerful one in my mind. And the team is creating, I think, some of the best content out there in the Futureverse. It's super detailed. It's super well thought out. All of the bits inside of these machines are individually crafted, so that they are kind of tradable and upgradable. It's a really cool environment that they're building in. It's using web. It's using web to render these environments, and so we talked about earlier about providing optionality for developers in the way that they want to go to market from a device or engine support point of view. This is another flavor that we can test and make sure works on top of the infrastructure that and content that the Futureverse has been building. I think what you're seeing now is Professor Jenny Bryan's lab inside of the Atom Car Club, which is the first environments that will enable people to come in and interact with their vehicles and start to prepare for the games that are starting to roll out on the car side of things.
Thank you for giving that overview. Yeah, I think that was really cool and just an awesome opportunity to kind of give an example of what you've been talking through. There was one piece that I wanted to make sure to hit before we get more into some brand stuff around us building our own network, our own layer one blockchain, because on top of everything else that we're doing, we've also decided to just create this incredible infrastructure that obviously when you think about everything you said, it makes sense, but I'd love for you to kind of give a little bit of the why behind that. Like, why did we choose to go that route?
Yeah, it's another question we get often. I think so. Vitalik made a post recently about what he has come to learn about what blockchains are good at over the last 5 years or so, seeing how the application ecosystem has evolved, and he pulled out half a dozen things that he think will be the majority of what blockchains are used for in the infrastructure of the open metaverse. And blockchains are just one component of that infrastructure. I think that's really important to understand, especially if you're not familiar with this technology space, or you might think there's a bit of kind of hocus pocus going on. Blockchains are really, really good at a very narrow number of things. And I've been saying this for 5 years now. They're really shit at everything else. And so what we've been focused on is those 5 things, which Vitalik is now saying are the kind of important things for blockchains, things like identity, for example, and making sure that when we build those things, those 5 important anchor points for the open metaverse, let's call them, that the user experience is one that is frictionless and invisible for our users, that it feels like magic. And when we looked at the landscape of options to build on, to make that user experience happen, we couldn't find it anywhere. And so when you start with user experience as your guide, which is anchored back in that fluffy brand stuff that we talked about at the beginning of this, then you start to look at what are the things that can deliver that user experience. We quickly found out that there were a lot of holes in what was out there, and so that's what brought us to the position of building our own, because it was necessary to deliver the user experience to change some of the way that the protocols work at that chain layer. And so being able to do that and connect it to the other infrastructure, protocols, content and applications, allows us to deliver that seamless end-to-end user experience that we're talking about in a much quicker way than we would have having to try and shoehorn it into other things that were out there.
Yeah, really well said. And I think it's fun and it's an interesting mental exercise to go through, to think about. People think about the brand stuff and the tech stuff and all this as inherently separate, but the way you frame that the user experience, the value, the way that we want people to be put at the center is the inspiration for how the blockchain design has come into fruition. I think that's gorgeous. Like,
I've talked to every project you can imagine, and I never once heard them talk about user experience, and I think that says everything, about why adoption has been so low, even amongst, let's call them crypto enthusiasts, 320 odd million crypto enthusiasts around the world who hold or trade cryptocurrency. Less than 5% of those are directly interacting with on-chain applications, and even fewer are interacting with on-chain content applications. And so in a segment of users that seem to be risk takers and early adopters, that's an appalling statistic. And that's what we're trying to fix with Root.
Beautiful. Shara, I feel like there's a great dovetail into brand related to that as well. The inspiration behind our brand and kind of how that fits with what the story that Aaron was just weaving. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I actually think it's interesting that to use the term user experience in relation to the brand, which we haven't done in great detail yet, but I think it's the perfect term, which is that the brand was designed to represent everything that humans and companies will build and imagine within the universe of the Futureverse. Anything that anyone will create, we have to represent. And I think the user experience term is so appropriate here, which is how will users experience Futureverse? They're not going to experience Futureverse, the brand. They're going to experience everything that is built using our tools and our protocols and our vision for the future opened up to everybody else. And so that's how we architected what the brand looks like. Is it actually looks like everything that is built using all of what we have to offer. And so it's really interesting. This was actually one of my most favorite brands to build. I've always been obsessed with building brands. Both Aaron and I have. That was one of the things that really united us in a lot of ways, is the importance of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and what the brand stood for and why it was architected the way it was. I know Aaron tweeted out the other day that we used scientists to help advise on some of the components of the brand. We didn't only use scientists. We used quantum physicists, we used etymologists, we used energy healers, we used past life regressionists. And we did all of this because the brand wasn't and isn't set out to represent us. So we needed to say and think through, what are the words that we're using? What do they mean to everyone across the entire globe? We might use the word magic. We might use the word believe. We might use the word love. But what does that actually mean to everybody else? And so to be able to create a brand that is representative of everyone, you have to be in your most open state, and you have to be as dynamic and as cliched as it is, metaversal as possible. And so that's how we architected the Futureverse brand, is that anytime you see the brand, it's supposed to represent a portal and how you'll move through all of the worlds that you'll be able to so seamlessly move through within Futureverse. And so that's why you'll see the brand portal show up only in the worlds that it's constructed with. And so these are the perfect representations of what we mean. And I know, Knux, you were asking me earlier about some of the inspiration behind some of these choices. And one of the things that sort of sent us in this direction was one of my favorite brand stories about the architecture of the color palette of MTV. When they were designing the color palette of MTV, they said, well, music is a feeling. Music is something that is multi-genre, that has so many types of sounds and looks. How could a single color palette represent this brand? And Futureverse is no different. The metaverse is imaginative, immersive. It can't possibly have one color palette, and therefore there is no way that we will either. And so we'll truly represent everything that everyone builds on our platform and alongside us. And you'll see that as we continue to roll out pieces of the Futureverse brand identity. It's really, really intricate and really important to us. Everything has a deep strategic decision, and we've thought everything through with a lot of thought and a lot of heart. And that was most important to Aaron and I before we put this out, that it represented what everyone could do with us.
Thank you for giving that overview, and thanks for going over that example of, I think it's really helpful to understand that mindset behind, music doesn't have a color, all that different sort of stuff, and how that applies to us in this multi-dimensional experience.
The metaverse is something you'll feel. And that's, I think, a little bit feels a little philosophical, but it truly is. You will be, the next version of the internet is immersive, like Aaron spoke about earlier. You will feel it. And I know people are like, well, how will I feel it if I'll be in a digital world? We feel energy through technology, and that's what we'll continue to remind everyone of.
Absolutely. So I guess, are you both ready to answer a few questions over the next 10, 15 minutes to kind of see how everything's going?
Go ahead.
I'm going to go through some of the you've been doing it. You've been answering
Aaron
a ton of them, but now I'm
out.
going to do some more direct ones. So we pulled out some from the Twitter, and then obviously we're going to get bombarded, which Aaron's been doing a great job of checking an eye on in the kind of running chat from YouTube. So one of the first ones, and you've already said this, but I want to really take a different lean into it. So a lot of people are asking like when token, when rewards, things like that. You've already answered that. But what I feel like people are asking when they say that, or at least for me, if I were to ask that, they want to know when can they start participating and being rewarded in more than like a meta sort of way. And I appreciate the meta game sort of aspect of what we're doing. And you've talked about portals, you've talked about minting, using the root network, things like that. Could you give like a high level overview? You don't have to commit to hard dates or anything like that of what that journey looks like over the next epic for us within Futureverse.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of these times where I have to be careful what I'm saying here for everyone's benefit. But in general, our philosophy is to roll this out in a way that is an engaging experience for the community, that they're participating and doing stuff to help us prove that this technology and the infrastructure and the content works. It's not it's not a single moment in time. It's something that will happen in phases throughout the next kind of year or so, maybe even longer than that if you include the next layers in terms of the gameplay and elements inside of that. But at each stage, when we release something out, we want to make sure that the community has something to do with that. So that's what I was saying earlier. It's important for us to release the first route when you can go and participate in the network infrastructure. When the next tasks come out, it'll be you'll be able to put your route to work to go and do something within one of the worlds or applications or content, and so that there's always utility building when we're releasing the tokens into the community. And we've designed, I think, a really interesting system which both rewards for direct action that the community takes, but also rewards them for their historical action and for what they've, the assets that they've been interacting with and the things they've been participating in up to this date, as a modifier on how they get rewarded for completing those tasks or engaging with those applications. Everything that we've built out in that intersection between content and infrastructure is designed to make sure that those early contributors can continue to play that economic metagame, and that it is valuable for them to participate in that part or that role inside of the bigger community. I mentioned earlier we'll be releasing a paper on the Third Kingdom, which will show in a lot more detail about how that works and how the assets interact with the infrastructure and inside of that paper, and what roles your assets can play inside of the economy, inside of those ecosystems. I think that'll be a really exciting thing for people to dig into. The overall plan for getting the root network out there into the hands of developers is a pretty strong one. Apart from the content that we're building ourselves, we're building up a great pipeline of other brands and applications and game developers that want to build on top of Root. We'll be kicking off the accelerator programs early next year, which will enable us to help guide people through that journey if they've got great ideas that they want to come in, or they want to build new bits of technology that help make that open metaverse experience better, or they have great content that they want to bring to life inside of our ecosystems. We have a separate fund on the side of this, on the side of the Futureverse, which will invest in projects that are bringing those things to the table for us. So there'll start to be a lot of activity from that January time frame going on as we build up our own capability and activities for the community to participate in, but also that wider developer ecosystem and content ecosystem.
Beautiful. You nailed like 4 of the different questions I had in front of me during that one answer. So that was great. So if you heard your question sort of get answered there, I'm not going to ask it because you could probably hear that he just answered it. I guess I'm going to ask you, Shara, one that I find interesting here around like the context of like Flufflets and Atom Car Club and like all these different things. Like we were talking about this sort of sectioning off of different kind of segments of these markets. When you think about something like Flufflets and you think about what it looks like for us to really build brand within Futureverse versus just building a Futureverse monolithic brand, like you were just talking about that we're not doing, talk through that process a little bit and the mindset that goes into decision making there.
Yeah, I think Flufflets is a great example. And I know we see the question in most AMAs, which is how are you going to market everything to reach the masses? And they want to know the details of our marketing plans. And I think marketing plans and brand growth plans are always a mix. They always follow the heart of what the organic nature of that brand is. And there's no one path. It's not build brand, build game, market here, 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 and here. You have to take the narrative and story. And I know Aaron's talked so much about the differentiation of our lore within this ecosystem versus the lore that we've seen beyond within the industry. We have one of the most deepest lore groups and architecture that exists. There are stories behind stories behind stories in how these characters are developed and therefore what the brands of particular characters, even separate from games, stand for. So Flufflets is a great example in how will we develop a product that can be 4-quadrant, which for those who don't know what 4-quadrant means, it means it touches every age demographic possible. So it has to relate to the 4-year-old voices who were in our trailer, who are the ones that are super obviously excited about Flufflets. My goddaughter, Aaron's daughter, all they do is look at pictures of Flufflets and the thingies moving around and for hours on end. And so that shows us that we have properties for a young audience, but then the Flufflets are one of my favorite brands we have. And I know my mom has seen the Flufflets and thought they're adorable. And that's a great example of how we'll develop the Flufflets. We might not come out with the Flufflets in the way you think. There will be cross-platform opportunities with brands that will surprise everyone. You'll see them across mass media, cross-platform places that will start to introduce these characters in our worlds in ways beyond just the niche of what we've seen done in Web3 and metaverse thus far. So I think it will be unexpected and will bring each brand out in a very different way. And that's what will allow us to reach the masses because we'll find them wherever they are based on what the property is.
Yeah, and I think on branding, and marketing, I want to make the point here, a couple of points here. We've always said it's really important to get the infrastructure right first before you start marketing, because once you create those campaigns in the way that we're creating them and you're going out with the brands we're going out with, you want to be able to bring people to a land on a place that is a great experience and has great things for them to do that feels like magic, so they never want to leave. And so it's really important to get that done first. And I think we're at that point now where we can confidently say the largest part of that infrastructure work is completed and we're getting into the next phase. Shara's point about the Futureverse brand and its positioning, the Futureverse brand I think has got a really interesting position in the market because it is a primarily B2B brand. It's a brand that is designed to provide the capability for others to come and build magical product experiences with us. And that's why you can see this portal meme reflecting the brands of companies that want to build with us as opposed to us being the center of it. And then inside of that, you've got a little bit of consumer opportunity there in the same way I think that Intel inside has consumer opportunity. And so we say that no matter where you are, you're always in the Futureverse. Well, I might be experiencing this really great application over here that's come through from, you know, a world-class IP rights holder or whatever it happens to be, a mainstream movie, or, you know, it's something that you might have experienced as a piece of content that you're familiar with. But the thing that connects you to the metaverse is the Futureverse. And so you'll see that hybrid between a brand that's primarily trying to drive conversation and business development with other brands, but also a way for consumers to recognize that that they've got this thing they can carry with them between experiences and applications, powered by the Futureverse. And then the actual go-to-market for you know, bringing users into this ecosystem is the brand strategies are driven by the products, as opposed to there's this big Futureverse brand push that drives everyone in. Because our view is that customers in these segments are going to want to join into specific products and specific application experiences. And so, you know, the brand strategy for Flufflets, or the brand strategy for Adam Car Club, or the brand strategy for the Third Kingdom, or the brand strategy for AFA, or the brand strategy for the FIFA experience, all of those things have their own brand and marketing and comm strategies, because they're targeted specifically at the communities they're trying to reach. And then they're powered by this Futureverse brand.
And I just want to add a thank you to the people who noticed the detail in the music and the sound of the trailer and the Futureverse animation as well, because that's a great example of how we look to touch consumers in a very emotional way. And that's why we're using words like love, because we engage with things that we are attracted to and that we find a passion for and that we emotionally connect to. And that can be done not just in the visual design, but in the sonic design and in the words that are used and in how it's presented. And that will continue to be an incredibly important part of what we do. The music is an exceptionally important part, not only with a lot of the really cool technology that we'll announce probably at the top of the year around what we're doing specifically in music, but also how we use music in our own brand properties as well, and how we deliver it, which means we'll be releasing the music from the trailer along with a lot of other brand music across all global DSPs next week.
Yay.
Impressive. That's really cool. I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
Surprise.
A surprise. Yay. Shara, did you, I don't remember what we aligned on. Did you want to share anything about the people that were included, the vocalists that you brought in? Any updates there? Or are you going to do that in a separate channel, like the prizes and all that?
We'll do that. Those will be coming. Everyone who's anxiously awaiting your fluffs, you will receive them imminently. Yeah. Don't worry. And I do.
You know why it's taking time? Because Shara's handpicking them.
No, that's not.
I believe that. I believe that.
Because of everything that we're doing. But separate from that, I think it's a really good point. I do want to emphasize how important and special it was for us to be able to use voices from the community in the trailer. It was the final piece that really made it everything we wanted to be, because we weren't doing this alone, and there was no singular voice that could ever represent the nature of what we wanted to say. So everyone did an incredible job, and so many voices worked so hard with me to keep delivering the lines the way that I wanted them. So thank you to everyone who contributed. We're so honored to have you in it.
Yeah. No, that was amazing. That was a really good touch. I feel like, you know, that was just a brilliant way to really bring that brand promise to life. I guess here's a softball for you while I think of a better question, which is a good one though. If I'm just some random person and I'm watching this, how do I get involved? Because even though you've done a phenomenal job, I think, giving an overview of all of this, I mean, I feel like the obvious answer is, you know, figure out what you like, because we've got a little bit of everything. But I'd be curious from your perspective, while we're still on the ground floor in this sort of super user, you know, like initial early adopter builder phase, before we are like just in the precipice of bringing in the masses, this is your chance. Like, what is your advice about how to get, you know, involved in what we're doing and help us?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have this fucking amazing community. So if you jump into any of our channels and start to ask questions, they're going to be super helpful and super friendly and super inviting. The Fluff World Discord is an awesome place to start. We've got great community content creators out there that are creating tutorials, and if you look at some of the YouTubes that have come out recently, I've retweeted a few of them that give a breakdown on what the ecosystem is all about and what's involved, and give you the broad view of all the content that's in there to see which flavor you might like to kind of take a bite of. The Prawns is always a good reference site. The Prawns website, which I think is at prawns.xyz, the prawns.xyz.
Yeah, the prawns.xyz, yeah.
Yeah, is a well put together community resource that has heaps of information about what we're up to, and where you can find more information about the content. Sorry, bit of a noise outside there. So that would be my first kind of port of call. And I think the Futureverse website, obviously futureverse.com. Read the white paper. It's a little bit geeky and technical, but you should be able to get the concepts of what we're thinking about and why the idea of autonomy and ownership matter inside of the metaverse. That part should be relatively easy to get a hold of as a new user to this technology and to the concept of the open metaverse.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually going to answer that question too, Shara, if you wanted to. I was just going to say, to start off with, there's a question that's come out about influencers. The first thing is, we've never paid an influencer to promote our technology, our brands, our content, and so we just don't do it. We create deep and meaningful partnerships with people who are important in culture, and so we're not the kind of company that would just go and blast out to a bunch of influencer marketing people and say, hey, send this message out and shill it. It's just not the way we operate. We've never done it, and it's not the kind of brand we're trying to build.
Yeah.
If you see us working with a celebrity or an influencer, they have a deep relationship with us, and they've sat with both Aaron and I, and we've learned why they're interested in the space. We've educated them on why we're doing what we're doing, and we've come up with a mutually beneficial strategic way to build together every single one. And you'll see that with a lot of the ones that we'll begin announcing in Q1 and Q2 of next year. These are long-term relationships, not influencer marketing.
Yeah, that was a great segue to a question that's on here that I was going to ask, which is, and I think it could be our last question to kind of wrap all of this up, because I think we've been going for a while and it's been awesome. But overall, we just kind of let the cat out of the bag in a lot of ways last week with our Futureverse launch and some of the PR that's come from that. Without, obviously spoiling specifics, because that would defeat the purpose of, strategic marketing and PR. What is kind of the overall trend and strategy of how you should expect, like, if you're part of this right now, to see, like, obviously there's going to be bits and pieces throughout the different brands kind of popping up over the next couple of quarters. But if I'm, a big supporter of this ecosystem in general, what general flow of information should I start to see hitting the masses? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, there's layers of this. There's Futureverse specific stuff, and there'll be more information coming out about the Futureverse and what we've been building and who we've been building with, and the details of funding and all those kinds of things will coming out across mass media channels. And then you've got within the brands, each one of those brands and products got their own kind of strategy in terms of the segments they're chasing and building into, which you'll see, if you follow those individually, you'll start to see those come out. Obviously, we'll reinforce them through the Futureverse channels as well. So if you're just following us, you'll catch a lot of it. But it does pay, as many of our community know, to kind of get in under the hood and listen to the little bits of alpha along the way. You'll always be playing the game. And so you'll probably start to see heaps and maybe even too much for the average person to keep up with because there are so many properties out there. But just choose the ones you love, get into those channels and those communities, and start to see those come to life and help us like you've been doing so far to reinforce that content and spread it and to create new layers on top of it.
That was a perfect answer to that question, I think. So I appreciate you translating with what you were doing, what was being asked there. I think we're about ready to wrap. Is there anything either of you would like to share as kind of closing remarks before we do that?
No, just if everyone thought this was a big year, wait till next year rolls around.
Yeah, 2023, the year of the rabbit.
That's right.
The universe and the Futureverse, they're speaking to us, and it's gonna be a big one.
I'll continue to put alpha on my fingernails.
Yes. Good. Pay attention to that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. I'm sure we'll do another one of these really soon. If you didn't hear Aaron earlier, make sure to go to futureverse.com. Follow us on Twitter @Futureverse. That's probably your easiest way to get into the Futureverse and see all the different amazing things that are happening. Make sure to give us some comments and replies on some of our upcoming posts on how you felt this went so that we can tweak the next one. But we're definitely looking forward to talking to you all again and really appreciate the engagement from the community on this. This is really fun.
And thank you, Knux. You killed it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Take care.